Good morning, dear participants, dear great students, great doctoral students from all over Africa, the Vice Chancellor, University of Ibadan, the Professor Juma Shabani, Director, University of Burundi Doctoral School, professors, ladies and gentlemen. Today promises to be another exciting day for us because we'll be looking at different methods of teaching STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We'll begin by looking at the cultural-techno-contextual approach to teaching science. And then we'll get on to a very, interesting presentation on 6 other methods of teaching science. Today is May the 12th, 2020, and I'm pleased to remind us all that our continent, Africa, is a land of great promise. Mind what I've done here, I say promise. Africa is superlatively well resourced. We have the best human resources, natural resources. Bees will rush towards honey. So you have many people outside our continent rushing towards here, to tap from the milk and honey flowing in our land. Unfortunately, our land is poorly developed, owing to a host of factors, which you all know. One of them is poor delivery of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths, which is important for development. Yet, performance in STEM is below most of other regions of the world. What an irony. There are some challenges facing us. Grand challenges, I call them grand challenges. In previous studies, we have seen that deficiencies in curriculum delivery, that's how science is taught, is a major challenge. It's a major grand challenge. We have inadequacies in the quality of our teachers, in the quantity of our teachers. We have severe inadequacies in facilities for teaching science, especially engineering, technology, and maths. Poor attitude of students to work and overloaded science curriculum. The big question is, how then do we deliver science for meaningful learning and for performance to be improved? Look at a classroom. This is not a typical classroom, because a typical classroom has a typical, say, biology class in a typical secondary school in Nigeria has almost like 100 students. So this teacher, go to a biology lab, poorly resourced. Physics laboratory, poorly resourced. Chemistry laboratory, poorly resourced. Engineering laboratories, poorly resourced. Computer studies laboratory, poorly resourced. So here we are, teaching methods that have been used over the years. If you pick a book on methods of teaching science or teaching STEM, what you find, demonstration method. This is what we've been teaching over the years. Demonstration method, cooperative learning method, V-diagramming, constructivist methods, concept mapping, use of analogies, lecture method. These are the methods we have been using over the years. These methods, by the way, have been good. They have their advantages and disadvantages, which Professor Olabi will be letting us know. So you have a toolbox where all the methods are there. So a teacher walks into a classroom like Professor Uche Nanzewi when she was teaching biology in those days. In those days, she taught biology maybe about 70 years ago. That's by way of a joke. So, you use a lecture method, you drag it out, drag the tool out. Demonstration method, you drag the tool out. So, we're now having another tool, another approach, which is the CTCA, Cultural-Techno, you can see it here, Cultural-Techno-Contextual approach, CTCA. The road to CTCA's invention has been long, very long. I narrated this story in the first lesson, from 1974 to 2015. God is awesome. I'm so delighted that the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ibadan is here today. This CTCA was first formally launched at the University of Ibadan, the Faculty of Education. We had a faculty lecture and I launched the CTCA approach at that time, documenting the several years of inventing this approach, Culturo-Techno-Contextual approach. So you don't just wake up one day and say, look, all the people that invented all these things, they wake up one day, the Johnson brothers, they'll say, okay, comparative learning. No, these were based on empiricism, on research over the years. V-diagramming. They don't just come and draw diagram, V-diagramming for practical work. No, no, no. Years and years. So the road has been long. And thank God the road was blessed at some point in 1992. That's 28 years ago. I won the first time in the history of UNESCO. This is the oldest prize of UNESCO, the Kalinga Prize. I won this prize 28 years ago for my contribution to reinforcing the teaching of methodologies of science education. So what is CTCA? As you can see, it's an amalgam of you know, if you took steel, you have iron, you have, you see, when you amalgamate, when you put things together, you get the strength of all of them coming together, like in this case, technology, culture, context, to form CTCA. Over this morning, we were told that there's a herbal mixture coming from Madagascar, and it has all of these elements to boost the immune system against COVID-19. So you find the major elements of what I'm going to be discussing now in chapter 2 of our course text, which I've shared with everybody. So what are the steps? How do you implement CTCA in the classroom? The first thing that you do is, okay, you have a topic that you're going to present next week. Then you give the assignment to your students to interact with their parents, interact with their friends and all that, to look at the cultural elements. So we'll talk about indigenous knowledge. What indigenous knowledge is connected with this topic? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, there is no topic in the science curriculum, no topic in any curriculum whatsoever in the school subject that you cannot find indigenous knowledge to support. And then they are to look for web resources. Look at these students. I think it was Professor Michael who took this 2014. That's 2014, 6 years ago. Students, most of our schools, they have some handheld device like this. And let me tell you what our studies in 2015, 2016 showed us. Not the students, but you see, in Lagos, most of the students, not most now, many of the primary school students, do you know what they use their handheld devices for? Pornography. They watch pornographic films. So if they can watch pornographic films and engage in Facebook, all manner of distractions, so why can't we now gallop on that and get them to use these same resources to look for the topic that they're going to teach them the following week? So when the lesson now convenes, that's step 2. That step 1 is giving them pre-lesson assignment. Step 2 is when the lesson begins, you then get them to work in groups and share the knowledge and experiences that they'll be able to glean on indigenous knowledge relating to the topic and what they'll be able to get from the internet resources. And the group leaders will then report to the group. All of this can be done in 40 minutes, 45 minutes. We've done it since 2015, 5 years now down the road, and it's working quite well. Step 3, as the lesson is progressing, now the teacher should draw practical examples from the immediate surrounding, immediate context of the school. And importantly, we have found that humor is important for livening up the science class. You see, the science class is usually taken to, something that is serious, something that is science difficult to learn. So look for what we call context-specific humor. Franklin worked with me on this, and we got a great publication and he did his master's with me on humor in science teaching. Humor is important. So to relax the class, the 4th step is as the lesson progresses, you link the topic with cultural practices and the web resources. And at the close of the lesson, when you are summarizing, you now send 1 sentence or 2 sentences or a page, no, not 1 sentence, a page of 162 characters, I think, of SMS or WhatsApp to students. These students have WhatsApp. So that's for CTCA in the classroom. What about in the laboratory? The same thing. Pre-lesson, practical, then you take on the others, number two. They're all the same thing, before and during and after. In field studies, before you go on the field trip, you know what you're going to do on the field trip, and then you give the assignment on cultural practices and web resources. And before the field trip, before you enter the bus or you go leave the school for a field trip, you review, you get them into groups, and then you have as the field trip is progressing, you draw practical examples for the environment, sprinkle of humor, and at the close of the field trip, brief summary of the lesson is sent via WhatsApp or SMS to students. Before I close this, we've had some interesting experiences. Students in the rural areas may not have internet service. That's not a problem. As we go through this, we'll be able to see how we'll be able to get away with that challenge. The other is that many students, especially those in urban areas like Nsukka, like Lagos, like Bujumbura, may not be familiar with cultural practices because they are seriously urbanized. So how do we now get this? We'll find a way around it. You see, their parents, they have to interact with their parents. And when you see that they must come back with something to the class, they will, you see, it's a way, this CTCA approach is a way of dragging our urbanized students back to Africa, back to the indigenous knowledge that we have. You could hear that, I think Mrs. Faith Igbo said, the children say, well, I don't want to stay in Nigeria again. I want to go. By the time CTCA is implemented in Faith Igbo's house, they will want to stay and enjoy Nigeria. Now, let us have reports of some of our ongoing dissemination efforts. And I'm going to yield to a couple of researchers who have been working on this. We have had we have had researchers all over the world now, but there are some that will report who are in this class who will report. So, Oladejo, if you are ready, you can take the floor.
This study was conducted using CTCA approach in teaching radioactivity in class with to students. Immediately after the pre-test, the CTCA approach was the first step was given to the students. The students were given advanced organizer to go home to use their phone or any other internet facility, internet mobile devices to source for information on radioactivity, and afterwards, based on what they have got as information, they spoke with parents or any adults around them on cultural practices related to concepts of radioactivity. In class, I had 31 students. I divided the students into 4 groups. Group of 8, 8, 8, and 7. Each group had a group leader, and then each of the groups were given 7 minutes to discuss and reflect their findings from various homes and from different sources among themselves. Based on their reflection, each of the group leaders were given 3 minutes to present what they found. One of the group, Group B, said that one cultural practice that they researched at is that camphor, which is one of the regular things we use at home to chase away insects. The parent told him that camphor will add a camphor at the first time is quite big, and over time that those found that the camphor is reducing in size. And this can be to say that the camphor is radiating gradually and is disintegrating to lose its original size to become small. Other groups also gave their own cultural view of what radioactivity would mean. In fact, one of the other group also said that the fact put in that if you have wound in the cultural part of the Yoruba, they could put stone in fire and make you to put your leg on that hot stone. The radiation from it is what's expected to put the leg inside to cure the wound. However, based on all of this, their submission, I now aggregate to give them my own view as well of what radioactivity could lead to in our culture. I used to call the concept that there's heat in the environment. Imagine a room that is locked for about 2 hours or 3 hours of the day, and then you're unable to go into that room. By the time you want to open the room, you see that heat will reach to you. That is a form of radiation. And that one is another cultural practices. Our fathers that used to use the old modern kitchen would have so many things around the kitchen so that heat radiating from the source of fire can actually dry up those items. Then that's to step 3, join concepts around
losing you now.
I told the student, we have discussed 3 types of radiation: the alpha radiation, the gamma radiation, and beta radiation. Of these 3 types of radiation, we can liken alpha radiation, which is of heavier particle, to sunlight energy or energy from the handling of this energy consuming bulbs. While we can liken the beta radiation to the light energy coming from energy saving bulbs, or say the moon. This were the conceptual, the contextual concept that I gave to the students, just to bring them closer to the environment and to see what radiation. I'm going to say the spontaneous emission of radiation is something far away from you. It's what's around you and can also feel it. And step 4 was to remind the students said by their colleagues. So I reiterated the issue of camphor, my own concept of the uru, and that of the stone that can be used to cure wound, which is one of the uses of radioactivity. I move further to put in another flame of technology by showing them different devices that we use to measure radiation: the thermal counter, the cloud chamber, and of course, the ventilation counter. Then step 5 was to bring in a bit of humor. So, mom, go and check your brother for me. And yes, mother, I can see the body is radiating. I suspect it's alpha radiation. And what do you mean? He said, I will need a number counter to actually know which type she's in. And that's the radiation called television. That's by the way of humor. Step 5 was to the lesson. And of course, I gave a summary of what we have learned so far, defining radioactivity as spontaneous emission of radiation such as alpha, beta, and gamma ray. This summary was sent to the students as text messages, and afterwards, I told them that coming from the next class, one of the students will be appointed each week to send the summary of the lesson, and I therefore informed them of the next topic after that class, radioactive radiation, which is always the first step of the next class, the advanced organizer, to go home, do the same thing with their phone devices, and ask for cultural intervention from their parents or a person who can help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oladejo. We'll have, let's go to Ghana now. Let's go to Ghana and have a feel. Aside, you see, the CTCA approach is not only for science. The CTCA approach can apply to any subject at all. To geology that our daddy, the Vice Chancellor of University of Ibadan, is teaching. To mathematical physics that Professor Juma Shabani is teaching. So let's see. We're going to Ghana now. What we're going to hear from Ghana is not anywhere near science. And it's not pure science. Yes. Yes, we can see your screen, yes. So, Fred?
Okay, so basically, I applied the CTCA in testing the efficacy of teaching bureaucracy in Ghana. Next slide, please.
Next slide, Oladejo.
So we have looked at, we've already considered the processes. The first is to pre-assign students to the topic by encouraging them to find indigenous practices. That is the cultural aspect. And web resources related to the topic. And the web resources refers to the techno aspect of it. So what did I do? No, back to the other slide, sir. Oladejo, you went so fast.
Oladejo, it will tell you when to move.
We're introduced to bureaucracy, and I encourage to find indigenous information or materials relating to bureaucracy through relatives, friends, parents, and web resources. This is to be discussed in the next lesson. So I gave them this in the first lesson, that they should get all of this information to be discussed in the next lesson. This is the cultural aspect of it. Next slide, please. So the second is subsequently begin lesson on output from step 1, that is from the group. So each student reports findings in individual smaller groups of 8 students. Group leader summarizes this and presents in class. These are the basis of my lessons. So what basically happens here is that the students are grouped. Then in their groups, they you remember that I had given them prior information ahead to find information about cultural elements related to bureaucracy from their parents, relatives, and also using internet sources. So when they come, they are in groups, they discuss, they put their ideas together, and a leader now presents that to the class, to me, and then other students. Can you go ahead, please? So lesson 3, lesson continues with drawing examples from the immediate surroundings. That is the context. And it's important to inform that bureaucracy has such features as hierarchy. Hierarchy just meaning that authority is in layers. So we looked at our immediate surrounding, that is Ghana, and we realized that chiefs, sub-chiefs, and also divisional chiefs fall under the concept of bureaucracy, and these were reported by students. And then another key feature of bureaucracy is specialization. That is, we have accountants, we have lecturers, we have managers as it pertains in the civil service. And we said this is just not new to Africans.
Sure.
In Africa, we also have specialization like blacksmiths. Some families are noted to be blacksmiths.
Yes.
Some are cobblers, others are farmers, others are hunters. So this was drawn from the students. Next slide. So here lesson continues with linking topic with cultural practices and web resources. So here it then behoves on me the lecture to add other examples. For instance, orderliness. When chiefs talk, you don't talk back. It is an example of the orderliness that reflects in bureaucratic organization and I further go on to make correction to some indigenous practices cited by students which are not appropriate. Can we go on to the next slide?
Next slide.
Okay. So teacher sends a summary of the lessons to students via SMS or WhatsApp to the students at the close of the lesson. I chose to use WhatsApp to put all of the summary of the discussions and then send it to students. Remember that it is ideal that you do this this summary does not exceed 400 words. Maybe some 380 words would be good. So here I say bureaucratic features such as hierarchy finds space in African traditional settings like Dagon, where we have chiefs and sub-chiefs. Specialization as a feature of bureaucracy is reflective in indigenous African cultural settings. Some families are noted as blacksmiths, butchers, cobblers, farmers, etc.
All right,
Whilst
thank you. Okay, that is fine. That is fine.
Yeah, so basically this is it.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Fred Awa from Ghana. We're impressed with your work on the CTCA. Let's come back to Nigeria. And, Fred Awa is the president in Ghana, and Francis, his brother, is also president here. So let us get to Francis Onyewuchi. Let's see how he's been able to use CTCA. Francis.
Thank you very much. Implementing CTCA in teaching refractive index in physics. Now, at the first encounter, when the topic refractive index has not been taught to the class, a pre-test was administered to the students. Thereafter, the students were assured that there is no concept in physics that has no African indigenous knowledge relation. And therefore, they were told to go home and inquire from their parents and elders the relationship or the connection in indigenous knowledge with refractive index. And at the same time, they were told to surf through their phones, through the internet, to find out the ideas they can see about refractive index. Now, step 2. Next slide. Introduction of the topic, refractive index, in the next class. Students were now grouped into 4, and a leader appointed by each of them, each of the groups. Now, meanwhile, these groups were mixed sex, mixed ability, mixed ages. Now, they shared their reflections in indigenous knowledge and the cultural practices and the beliefs, and the ideas they obtained from the net. Group leaders were instructed to document them as to present in the general class. When we now gathered together, this leaders presented these reflections, which among others included rainbow, soap bubbles, colors seen in the crystals, bending of a straight straw when immersed in water, and so on and so forth. And I, as the teacher, now wrapped them up and brought out their exact implication in refractive index. Step 3. Now, the contextual aspect of this lesson, I took them to the environment. They have seen swimming pool, they have seen somebody in the swimming pool, they have observed the depth of swimming pool as it appears up than it actually is when they enter the swimming pool. Now, they have also seen basins of water where you drop maybe a stone or a coin inside it, it appears to be lifted up while inside the basin of water. They have seen rainbows, and they have seen even as an analogy, when somebody is running on a good road, he'll be moving very fast. But if he enters the bad road, as usually in Africa, in Nigeria in particular, he will slow down. That's also a way of showing that the velocity or the speed of light in one medium that is less dense, entering another medium that is denser, will now slow down, and that gives idea of refractive index. Now, step 4, class was reminded of the relevance of all these indigenous knowledge, cultural practices, and beliefs, like the swimming pool, the rainbow, the spoon appearing bent inside the water, and inside the water that is in a glass cup at the A glass boundary. Now, but one thing the teacher did was to make sure that misconceptions, like in the case of rainbow, which in our cultural society, so many believe that when rainbow appears, it means somebody important is going to die. It was now explained to them that rainbow is as a result of refraction. When light from the sun passes through droplets of water in the air, then due to refraction, the colors of white light will be separated, and those colors will be seen in the sky as a rainbow. And finally, these submissions or these indigenous knowledge and these cultural values, we are now, of the lesson now, we are summarized in 301 character words. And the lesson, or this summary, was sent to the students via SMS for them to also go to their phone and begin to search and begin to read this thing, since they are always handling their phone and watching so many things, as our prof said. So they are now made to use the opportunity to read this summary of refractive index lesson in their phone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's physics. Can we have biology now? It's Franklin. Franklin, are you in class?
Yes, I am, sir.
All right. So let's have Franklin. Let's have Franklin make his presentation. And then I think we have computer studies. Deborah, stand by after Franklin. And then we'll wrap it all up there. We want Franklin's PowerPoint. Yes. Okay. So, Franklin, take the floor.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So, I implemented the CTCA approach on difficult concepts in senior secondary school biology. First was to identify the concept that they found to be difficult, and result from our first study indicated that variation and evolution was the most difficult concept to learn. Now, this lesson was spread across 4 lessons so that we won't overload the student with the content. And in implementing the CTCA approach for teaching variation and evolution, 5-step process was followed. The first step was to inform the students about the lesson, which was variation in living organism. Now, the students were further grouped into mixed abilities and sex by the aid of the class teacher, because he knew their strengths and weaknesses. And the students were told to reflect on the indigenous knowledge of cultural practices, as well as to solve the need for relevant information that are related to the topic, and they were made to know that their findings would be discussed in the next class. Now, the step 2 of the approach involved the group leader presenting their findings on the reflection of indigenous knowledge and cultural practice, as well as the relevant information on the topic. Now, although the group leader were not able to come up with cultural practices, but they gave a summary of relevant information about the topic. So I went further to give my own cultural view on variation among living organisms with respect to tribal marks amongst members of families and different tribes, as well as a cultural festival among different tribes as well. We can see the Eyo festival, the Abegu festival, and the rest of them. Now, moving on to step 3, I tried as much as possible to use the context of their surrounding to further explain variation in living organism, and I went further. I went to use the different dishes in Yoruba, Igbo land, and Hausa land, and also call out several students to depict their differences in height and complexion. Now, the step 4 of the process involved clearing misconceptions that arise from the indigenous concepts shared by the student. Now, in my own case, the student had no cultural knowledge to share. So, assuming there were cultural knowledge that there were misconceptions, I as a teacher would clear them and make them understand the basics of the content. Now, in step 5, the summary of the lesson was sent to the students via SMS. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. Can we now go the last person? That would be computer studies or ICT. Deborah Gbanimo, if you are ready, if you are in class. Deborah, are you in class?
Yes, I'm in class, sir.
Okay, fine. So please take the floor.
Thank you, sir. So I'm talking about teaching logic gates using the cultural.
Okay, we have lost her now.
Techno-contextual approach. So after, and I told them they should go and read about logic gates, watch YouTube videos, and also have some their parents or people they can have some from their surrounding, like how.
Okay, we are losing her again.
So, hello, can you hear me, please, sir?
Yeah, we are losing you too much, but carry on, carry on.
So after that, they went for the assignments. Then they came back to the class. During the lecture, we had.
No.
Please can you move the slide? So during the lecture, the group leaders came out to talk about what they've discussed in their group about the logic gate. So they came back they discussed about the videos they watched, they shared their cultural knowledge among themselves. So the group leader came out to represent each group and discuss about the indigenous knowledge or the cultural practice associated with the topic. And myself, I gave illustration with the serial and parallel arrangement of crops in the farmland. For example, the maize which are arranged serially on the farmland, like the way we have our logic circuits arranged on the motherboard. The next slide, please. So then we talked about the tic-tac-toe. So the tic-tac-toe is a combinational circuit, is a combinational game where we have the X and O. And this is in a way related to the exclusive OR on the exclusive OR gates, whereby when we have too high, there's tendency for us to have an input high logic level 1, or we have the logic level O. That's where we have the tic-tac-toe. Then we use make use of the fitila, that's the lamp. Then we talked about the contextual aspect of it. The students were taken to the environment, whereby we saw the Ewe Padimo, which is the sensitive leaf. The sensitive leaf is the kind of leaf that has the on and off. When it's being touched, it goes off, and when it's being on, it comes on. So we use the sensitive leaf as to explain the NOR gate for the students. Then after that, the summary was sent to them via WhatsApp. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All our researchers, we appreciate the wonderful things that you are doing. And I want to continue, or rather end my presentation by, okay, let me mute So these are some of the reports of our ongoing dissemination efforts. You can see ongoing. Now, we are also disseminating globally. The idea is just like the others that invented cooperative learning, concept mapping, they are globally extended. They globally extended to us. That is why we're able to try out their methods. So we're happy to confirm that after the 2015 launch, we took this to the international gathering, that's the International Annual Conference of NAST in Chicago. And we made very well received presentations there. And later, that's the following year in Baltimore, we made a presentation at the same conference. That's the next one after 2015. 2017, the same thing. 2018, the same thing. So we've been going all over, trying to share the thoughts of our invention with others. This is one of the presentations we made in one of the NAS conferences, exploring the impact of cultural-techno-contextual approach in tackling underachievement in difficult concepts in biology. As you can see, after the book, this book here was in press, we sent it for review to giants in science education. Professor Bill Kyle, who was with us, he's one of the topmost STEM educator in the world. He's a Desmond Lee Professor of Science Education. He was the Executive Director of NAST. That's the global body of all science education researchers. So, as I said here, as the inventor of this approach, Peter Okebukola takes us on this and all of that. You also have this review. It's at the back of the book, by the way. Alejandro Gayad, who is a professor and Goizeto Distinguished Chair in Georgia also. So the overall idea is to publicize this. And in a little while, Springer, one of the leading publishing houses in the world, is publishing the International Handbooks of Education, International Handbook of Research on Multicultural Science Education. And I've been asked to put up a chapter on fostering science teaching and learning through the cultural-techno-contextual approach. This is going to be out, I'm supposed to submit in June 2015. By the end of this year, it will be out in this book, so that everybody that's able to access this globally will be able to have an insight into what we're doing. So the national, the regional, and global dissemination continues. But we have a plea. The plea is that let us all individually or as a group intensify efforts to contribute to the search for more effective methods for winning African students to science, and which will foster performance in STEM. Now, there's still room in this toolbox. CTCA is not the only tool. Professor Olabi will be telling us some other tools. But what we have found is that those other tools are the ones that we literally chucked down our throats from elsewhere. So the plea is for all of us here, all these doctoral students who are in STEM education and elsewhere, work towards getting the through the Afrocentric lens that Professor Michael Ove has asked us to look at, get some other tools, some other methodologies that can enable us achieve what our goal. That's our goal of a great promise for Africa. So we thank you, and we await questions and answers. We await questions at this stage, to which we'll provide answers. So open up the floor. I want to start with Mommy, a great science educator, Professor Uche Nanzewe. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I'm quite happy about those studies that the students reported. So I want to find out at what level did they do it? Was it at the secondary school level? Because
Okay.
the knowledge of the knowledge the students exhibited is also something great.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why I want to know at what level.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, we listed that. Maybe Oladejo, you want to answer that at some point. Madam Fetibo, you have the floor, ma'am.
All right, so thank you very much, Professor. I'm quite impressed with the work they did. For me, I've never seen I did physics, chemistry, and biology in secondary school. So I've never seen those science subjects taught like that before. Having indigenous knowledge involved, so it was quite impressive for me. What I found out is that resources, especially from some cultural background in Nigeria, is you don't find resources on the internet, and very few parents have much knowledge about indigenous knowledge of their culture. For example, now I'm not Igbo, sir, I'm Urugu. So I go online at times. Like now, I speak little Urugu because I actually did not grow back there, and most times I go online to teach my children Urugu. So most times, apart from the three major Nigerian languages we have, you find very little resources. Like I have very little resource on the internet for Urugu. So I just want to tell my doctoral students, my seniors, that they did well, and I'm quite impressed with the work they did.
Thank you so very much, ma'am. Thank you very much. David, DRC.
Yes, Professor. Thank you for the floor, and thank you for the presentation. I mean, before step one, in which a student must be informed ahead of the topic, there is another step, which is the preparation at home, in which the teacher fixes the objectives. My challenge is, how can the teacher, with 100 students, mix all the indigenous and the cultural in one lesson? Because in that lesson, we must have a timing which we must respect, and the objectives fixed before. The second question, the second challenge is, for example, I'm teaching differential equation of Bernoulli, of Riccati, and so on. How can students find cultural or indigenous knowledge in this lesson?
Thank you very much, David. I'll begin with that of David, and I'm going to ask Francis. You're going to follow up on that of David. I'll also make a few statements on David. And we thank Professor Fetigbo. I will ask Franklin, you can look at that of Fetigbo. On the Professor Nzewi's comment, I'll come back to it. But let me start with David. You see, David, you are right that we have to. There's a step preceding that of step one. But you know, our own step one is there's some echo somewhere now. All right, so our own step one is actually a prelude to the actual lesson. So you have, as we said, differential equation next week. So you ask your students to go and look for indigenous knowledge relating to it. There is nowhere found that there is no single knowledge that you cannot directly or indirectly relate to differential equation, directly or indirectly. In fact, UNESCO has a compilation of indigenous knowledge in different fields, and our research team, is putting together the indigenous knowledge in the different topics that we are teaching. In a little while, maybe another 4 or 5 years, God keeping us, we're going to have a book which has a topic in the school curriculum and indigenous knowledge, of that are related with that, and we keep building on it. So you are right about the large class, 100 students in the class. So how do you manage them? If Francis got the question, maybe he wants to also join me in responding. But in my view, it's quite straightforward. You have 100 students in class. They have come with 1 million indigenous knowledge ideas. So when they come, they work in groups. You see, the idea of working in groups is to now narrow those knowledge items and pick just one from the group or two from the group. So it's not everybody in the class that will be talking. No. They are in groups. They will meet in the groups for a few minutes, and then the group leaders will just talk from wherever they are, and so that's how the thing runs. Francis, you want to add a few things there? We have a few more minutes. Francis, you may unmute yourself. Francis,
Sir, task is for the fact that they will be grouped into 4 or 5.
Yes.
And then at the end, when the whole class meet together, we will be listening from the group leaders.
Exactly.
Who will present 1 or 2 of the summary. Then at the end, the teacher will work with these few indigenous knowledge and cultural practices that are raised, that are relevant to the topic at hand.
All right, we have a few more minutes. Madam Fethigbo, Migwo, you are in Urobo. I grew up in Urobo land. I had my primary education. After my schooling in Ikeja here, I went to Saple. I'm a Safa boy. I was a Saple. I know we have very rich indigenous knowledge. And I talk about urbanization. Urbanization has caught up with you, Fethigbo, has dragged you away from that. But see, the overall idea is not to get urbanized and forget our roots. So that is one major advantage of this CTCA. It will cost you when your children come to say, okay, we are looking at differential equation. Is there anything directly or indirectly from our indigenous knowledge? So, and you don't know. You check the internet, you don't know. You put a call through, explain to your father or grandfather or whatever, and by the time you now bring it forward, that is the march towards making Urobo, indigenous knowledge, sustain. If you don't do it, Fethigbo, if you don't do it, just forget it. Everybody will just forget everything, and it will be Western type that we'll all be working towards. Who did I ask to respond to Professor Nzewi?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, please, go ahead with that, yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, ma'am. The study were basically conducted with secondary school students, senior secondary school students, SS2 to be precise, because we found out that most of this topic must have been taught to the SS3 students. So for us to be sure that we are doing what is right, so we use SS2 students who have not been taught the topic at all.
Wonderful.
So as to see the efficacy of the approach.
Wonderful.
But while from Ghana, we had it taught to university 200 level students, bureaucracy 200 level students, both in Nigeria and in Ghana.
Sure.
So we are beyond secondary school to our institution. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. By the way, you see, the CTCA is not for any level, specific for any level. It's for all levels, from little kids up to this level, this PhD level. So, but the question that Professor Nzewi asked, all the topics that were taught, who were they taught to? They were taught to secondary school students, as Olade just said. And you got to find out, you got to ensure that the students do not know that topic well enough for you to now get the experimental condition confounded. So that would be it. What have we done here? We have given you some insight into the Culturo-Techno-Contextual approach, which was formally launched 5 years ago, and we are moving. And the chapter relating to this bit that we discussed in class today, you'll find in chapter 2 of the book. So once again, we thank you. We encourage you to try out the CTC approach, not alone. You can do it alone along with the lecture method, but do it along with other methods. So let's look at comparative effectiveness of CTCA and other methods. And for me as a person, my plea, as I mentioned, is for all of us, to make efforts to invent or develop some other methodologies. Do not badmouth our own. Do not put your bad mouth on our own. Do your own. Be a constructive critic. We are improving on it over time. We keep improving on it. So it's for us all to keep working hard to make Africa realize its promise. Once again, thank you all so very much.